In the high-tech metropolis of Verity City, Arthur Penhaligon was a man of routine. Every morning, at exactly 8 a.m., he would swipe his badge to gain access to the archives of the central bank. His job was to oversee the digital transactions of the city's elite and supervise the junior auditors. It was a position of privilege, one that required him to follow a strict procedure to ensure every number was accurate. However, Arthur's life was about to change. One rainy Tuesday, while reviewing a complex mortgage application for a luxury estate, he noticed a discrepancy. The documents claimed the ownership of the property belonged to a shell company, but the digital signature didn't look right. He decided to investigate. When he tried to verify the file, the system denied him, stating that the copyright of the attached digital deed was invalid. Arthur dug deeper. He found a trail of data that didn't conform to the standard banking regulations. It was a clue, a small thread that, when pulled, unraveled a tapestry of falsehood. What appeared to be a genuine investment fund was actually a front for something much darker. He realized that someone had managed to accredit false funds into the system, bypassing all security protocols. Arthur knew he had to be careful. In Verity City, knowledge was dangerous. He received an anonymous email that evening. It contained a simple command: "Meet me at the old docks if you want the truth." It was a risky request, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. He arrived at the misty docks, expecting an informant. Instead, he found a scene that looked like a trap. A man lay on the ground, lifeless. It was Julian Vane, a notorious software pirate known for stealing government secrets. Vane was a known thief, but he wasn't violent. Arthur stepped closer and realized with horror that this was a murder, staged to look like a suicide. A gun was placed in Vane's hand, but the angle was impossible. Suddenly, sirens wailed. Arthur had been deceived. This was a setup. Someone had played a cruel trick on him, using the email to lure him to the crime scene. He was no longer just an auditor. He was now the prime suspect in a homicide investigation. The police arrived with aggressive speed. They did not ask questions. They simply moved to arrest him. "You are under arrest for the murder of Julian Vane," the officer shouted. "I didn't commit this crime!" Arthur yelled, but his protests were ignored. They put him in handcuffs to restrain him and shoved him into the back of a patrol car. The stigma of being labeled a killer settled over him instantly. He was taken to the central station, processed, and thrown into a holding cell. It wasn't quite prison yet, but the jail cell was cold and unforgiving. The walls seemed to confine not just his body, but his spirit. Officers were instructed to restrict his communication with the outside world. He demanded a lawyer, submitting a verbal petition for his rights, but they ignored his demand. They wanted him to break. They wanted him to succumb to the pressure and admit to a sin he did not commit. Detective Miller was a man who knew how to instruct suspects to talk. He sat across from Arthur, his face hard. "We know you were working with Vane," Miller lied. "You helped him rob the bank's data servers. Did he try to bribe you? Or was it a vice of yours? Greed, perhaps?" "I am not a liar," Arthur said, his voice shaking but firm. "I found a fraud in the system. Someone is laundering money. Vane was the clue, not the partner." Miller laughed. "You expect me to believe that? You are a cheat, Arthur. You tried to pretend you were an honest auditor, but we found the transfers in your name." Arthur realized the extent of the frame-up. They had planted evidence. They needed him to confess to close the case quickly. They tried to make him reconcile with the idea of a plea deal. "Just admit it," Miller said. and the penalty will be lighter. Maybe just a heavy fine and a few years. If you go to trial, you'll get life." Arthur refused to obey their corrupt demands. He insisted on a trial. The weeks leading up to the court date were a blur. His lawyer, a sharp woman named Sarah, told him the odds were slim. "The jury selection is tomorrow," Sarah said. "We need people who can see past the police report. We need a suitable group of peers who understand technology." The courtroom was packed. The judge, an elderly man named Justice Holloway, looked down from his bench. The prosecution painted Arthur as a mastermind of vice and greed. They claimed he used his privilege at the bank to facilitate the theft. "He is a wolf in sheep's clothing," the prosecutor announced. "He created a false narrative to cover his tracks." Arthur watched the jury. Their faces were unreadable. He knew the consequence of a guilty verdict would be the end of his life as he knew it. He would face a harsh sentence. Sarah began her defense. She didn't try to argue about the gun or the docs. She focused on the data. "This case relies on the assumption that the financial records are genuine," she addressed the court. "But we can prove they are a fabrication." She called a surprise witness, a former colleague of Arthur's whom he used to supervise. The colleague had found a backdoor in the system, a hidden procedure that allowed an administrator to alter logs without leaving a trace. "Arthur didn't have that level of access," the witness testified. "Only the bank's director did." The courtroom murmured. The judge leaned forward. "Are you saying the evidence against the defendant was manufactured?" the judge asked. "I am saying the ownership of the illegal account belongs to the director, not Mr. Penhaligon," the witness stated clearly. The revelation shattered the prosecution's case. The director, sitting in the gallery, tried to leave, but the bailiffs were ordered to restrain him. The falsehood that had nearly destroyed Arthur's life was stripped away. The director had tried to cheat the system and deceive everyone, using Arthur as a scapegoat. But the truth, like oil in water, had risen to the top. The jury did not take long to deliberate. They returned with a verdict: not guilty. The judge turned to the director. "You will be held to answer for this fraud and the murder of Julian Vane. The sentence for such betrayal of public trust will be severe." Arthur walked out of the court, the fresh air feeling sweeter than ever before. The penalty for his curiosity had been high. He had lost his job and his reputation was bruised. But he had kept his freedom. He did not want to go back to the bank. The rigid corporate world, which used to require his absolute obedience, no longer appealed to him. He realized that the stigma of the trial would fade, but the lesson would remain. He had refused to succumb to fear. 6 months later, Arthur opened his own firm. He helped companies secure their data against those who wished to rob or pirate their hard work. He was no longer just a man of routine. He was a guardian of the truth. He would never again let a liar hide behind a wall of numbers. He had learned that while a system can command compliance, only integrity can command respect.